Hello. Oh,
Good morning, everyone. This is Joel Wallach coming to you live from Youngevity this morning. And our esteemed surprise guest is, of course, my amazing father-in-law, Dr. Wallach. And we are going to give you a little history tour this morning and share with you some of the books that Dr. Wallach's written, a little bit about all the amazing things that he's done in his life and his career. So, good morning, Dad. How are you?
very fine, Michelle. Thank you for the kind words.
You're very welcome.
It's always fun to be with you and the family and here in this little museum. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's just the beginning of a long journey. I like to say 200 years is not enough, and so we're just starting. And so just grateful for the Youngevity Nation, all the great things they do, because it contributes to getting this information out to the world, and we appreciate that. Basically, started out, I was in agricultural school at the University of Missouri, ag school. Halfway through that, got into veterinary school. So the last 2 years of ag school, I was finishing up veterinary school, or starting veterinary school, excuse me, first 2 years of veterinary school. Also, this was during the wars in the Southeast Asia days. And so we were required to go to ROTC at the University of Missouri. Most people don't realize the University of Missouri was an A&M college like Texas A&M and Florida A&M. A&M is an acronym for agriculture and military. And so I was in for 4 years in ROTC. When I graduated ag school, I also graduated as an officer and a gentleman as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. So
Is that you on the wall right there?
this is me right here it was, let's see, I was 24 years old there, okay?
24,
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah, and so it was beginning of a distinguished career in the military, finished 5 more years in the field and 20 years in the Air Force. Retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force in 1994. So that was kind of a great career. Helped me travel around and see the world and learn things. And in between there, actually, when I graduated veterinary school, I had 2 years into my I had 2 years into my degree in pathology. I was trying to go for a PhD in pathology, and I got 2 years done at the University of Missouri. They sent me to Iowa State University so I could have a different taste for a different location. And Iowa State University, I got 1 year in, so I got 3 years out of my 4. And then Marlon Perkins from the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show asked me to go to Africa and work on the wild rhino, the white rhino conservation project. And he said, I can always come back and finish my PhD. I can't not accept Marlon Perkins' invitation. So I spent 2 years in South Africa and Central Africa working on the white rhino and the elephant conservation project. You can see some of the shots here, some of the pictures of these projects. And
that's you right here in this picture.
That's me right there, always the shortest guy. But caught over 200 white rhinos, shipped them back here. So if you see a white rhino in a zoo or wild animal park, it's either one that I caught or offsprings of the ones that I caught. So we did save the species. Very proud of that. And 2 years into that, Perkins sends me another letter and says, look, we just got this big grant from the National Institutes of Health, which is based on your PhD work, which is really a postdoctoral fellowship. But he said the PhD work, which resulted in a 1,200-page thesis, which was put in hard binding called The Diseases of Exotic Animals. That was my thesis for 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change of over 454 species of animals, and 3,000 humans. And the bottom line of that study was all vertebrates, whether you're a crocodile or a hummingbird or a fish or a turtle or a human being or a pig or a rabbit or a dog or a cat or a horse or a flamingo, didn't matter. Any vertebrate, if you're deficient in the same nutrient, you're going to get the same disease. I'm finding type 2 diabetes in crocodiles and alligators. I'm finding sickle cell anemia in hummingbirds and deer and antelope, and it's just driving everybody crazy because they thought these were genetic diseases in humans. It turns out they're all just nutritional deficiencies, and that was the basis of my thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship, which I finished up at Washington University and the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems, where I did my 20,000 autopsies in that project. Well, it turns out that they put a hard cover on it and sold it as The Disease of Exotic Animals. And today, if you go onto Amazon used books, if you find one that's beat up pretty bad, you can find it for $2,000 or $5,000. If you find one that's in pretty good condition, they sell for $8,000 to $12,000. They sell for $8,000 to $12,000. If you find one new in the box, never opened, it's $25,000 to $28,000. Because it's cheaper to buy the book than it is to spend $1 billion and redo the project. And so that's why that book is so valuable.
That was actually your second book that you wrote. Your very first book, which we have here on the wall, was Rhino Express.
Right. And The Saving of the White Rhino, that is a documentation of the 2 years I spent in South Africa and Central Africa. It was Southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. It was called Southern Rhodesia back then, now it's Zimbabwe.
How old were you when you published your very first book?
Oh, let's see, that had to be 1978, so I was 38 years old.
Oh, Rhino Express was written when you were 38. Oh, wow. So then you worked on Diseases of Exotic Animals. Steve always tells the story. How many years did it take you to actually write or put that book together?
Well, to put that thesis together, not counting the 10 years of the actual work.
Right.
Okay, because we didn't have computers and things back then. And so it was all done by hand. It was all typed up on one of these upright Underwood typewriters, fingers, two fingers. We're talking 5,000 pages to begin with, and the editors winnowed it down to 1,200 by using big words to make up for 10 little words and so forth.
Holy moly.
And yeah, that book, again, is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. That was my thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship in pathology. It represents 20,000 autopsies, 10 million chemistries, 10 million slides of special stains. And the purpose of the grant was to look for pollution as the cause of death from natural causes. And they were using the zoo animals in the big cities as the canary in the mine concept. Because all these different species, there was bound to be one of them would die from the same pollution that we would. And so since I had actually written in 1961 when I was only 21 years old and a graduate student in pathology, I ran into the first mass die-off in America from pollution and did all the detectory, got it published in the peer-reviewed, refereed chemistry journals. It was like crazy. And so I was giving those copies of that article to important people, including Marlon Perkins, and he used that paper as the basis to get the grant for the Center for the Biology of Natural Systems, where I did the 20,000 autopsies. And so that all kind of went together. And
so what year was it then that you decided to go back to medical school and go back so that you could actually start treating and helping people?
Okay, that was 1978.
Wow.
And that's because Emory University and the Yerkes Primate Center fired me. I was working for them. I was working for them as a pathologist, and I'd already, written my book here on the disease of exotic animals and Rhino Express. I had about 75 scientific articles that were published in scientific journals based from those 20,000 autopsies, and very well published, very well known around the world for these things. And I was working at Yerkes Primate Center, which is working with NASA and the space stations and monkey colonies and things. And I was one of the pathologists there. And again, it was a holiday. All the people who'd been there for 15, 20 years went on holidays. I was a new guy on the block, so they made me stay and deal with things. And I ran into the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis. I recognized being something extremely important, thought to be a genetic disease of humans, but I'd been through that with those 20,000 autopsies, so I knew it wasn't genetic. And so I went back to the colony where there was 24 other baby monkeys from 24 other couple monkeys, a mom and a dad, none of whom were genetically related together. Got permission to do biopsies, and they all had cystic fibrosis, so I knew it was an environmental problem, no genetic relationship. They all had cystic fibrosis. And fortunately, they had taken blood samples from these parent monkeys every month for 6 years, froze them and stored them. It took blood samples from these baby monkeys for the 6 months of age they were, and froze them and stored them. So I didn't have to get a grant to study it. All I had to do was go to those frozen blood samples, and I found out the nutrient that was missing. Now, I had experts around the world who on their letterhead confirmed that my diagnosis was correct, that they were cystic fibrosis monkeys. And then when I put it all together for publication, I had all the chemistry and everything. I was excited, took it to the powers that be at Yerkes Primate Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and Emory University, and they fired me. They said, Wallach, you must be sniffing glue. Everybody knows this is a genetic disease. It's the most terrible genetic disease in human beings. You're saying it's a simple nutritional deficiency. You're out of here. I said, well, why don't you test me like a guy defending his thesis for a PhD degree? No, we'd be laughed out of your university, you're gone. So I knew that they weren't going to treat these kids properly, so I decided to go back to school and became a naturopathic physician, primary care physician, licensed in Oregon and California. I taught nutrition there for 4 years, kind of worked my way through school, and been treating people ever since.
So your third book was Rare Earth Forbidden Cures. Why don't we back up just a little bit and go down to your
Rare Earth
Forbidden Cures. What made you write this book, and what is it really about? Because honestly, Dad, I'll tell a personal story real quick. I was like 19 when I first met you, and that was one of the very first books Steve shared with me. And it's not easy reading. So, or at least it wasn't for me at 19. It is, of course, for me today. What made you write Rare Earths Forbidden Cures, and what is it about?
Okay, well, rare earths is a term that covers a category of trace minerals that triple lifespans of laboratory animals. Okay, they're required for long life of all vertebrates. Okay, their specialty is longevity.
All right.
Okay, and there was no term at that time called epigenetics, but I knew that the genetic theory was wrong because they'd done these 20,000 autopsies. All the genetic diseases were not really genetic diseases, were nutritional deficiencies, and we learned how to prevent them in zoo animals and cure them and all this stuff. And so when I started doing research, it turns out that all the diseases said to be genetically transmitted in human beings that were not from measles during pregnancy or something like that,
Of course.
were caused by mineral deficiencies, because plants cannot manufacture minerals. Plants can manufacture vitamins, amino acids, and fatty acids because they're all carbon compounds, and they take carbon dioxide out of the air, like the carbon dioxide cycle. We use oxygen, give off carbon dioxide. Plants use the carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So we and plants are symbiotic, right? And so this book is essentially a trace mineral, major mineral book. It covered all the known diseases in the world in any animal or human being caused by deficiencies of minerals. That is a picture on the cover of a mitochondria, the little energy machine in all cells. And those bars in the lower 1/3 that have the double helix in them, they're the inner lining membrane of the mitochondria. They're called inclusion bodies when you see them under a light microscope. This is 126,000 magnifications from a microscope that looks at things at the genetic level, okay?
Right.
Okay? And so nobody had used these types of microscopes for pathology. They'd only use them for anatomy, okay? And so this one, again, is 126,000 magnification. You can see that inclusion body, which looks like a waxy pea under a light microscope, is actually the inner lining of the mitochondria. You can see all the double helix in there, so you knew that was a DNA in there and so forth. So there's all kind of nifty stuff. But at any rate, I'm only in my, I'm in my 20s at that point, and finding all these things, I did an experiment with 100 baby ducklings that came from the same mother-father, which is the core of this book.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and 25 of these baby ducklings, because we kept freezing the eggs like frozen human embryos until we had 100, but 25 on chopped up lettuce, 25 on food that came from hydroponically grown barley grass, and then we had the pellets that they use for baby ducks to feed them into Peking duck dinners for Chinese restaurants that had vitamins and minerals in it, and then the last 25 were on the pellets with all the nutrients in it and the hydroponically grown barley grass. Well, group number one would be a typical size baby duckling after 6 weeks on just lettuce, because they had enough stuff in their yolk sacs to do pretty good for 6 weeks. Group number two, which was fed the hydroponically grown barley grass, was 20% bigger. Head, length of body mass was 20% bigger because there's more nutrition in the hydroponically grown barley grass because it was getting more nutrients as a fertilizer.
Sure.
Group number three that got the pellets with the vitamins and minerals in it were 3 times bigger than each of group number 1 and 2. Remember, this is the same mother and father. The only genetic difference was some were boys, some were girls. Otherwise, the genetics are exactly the same in each group. And then group number 4, we call them the baby huey group. They were 5 times bigger than group number 1 and 2, and 3 times bigger than group number 3. Okay? All the same mother and father, the same spring, April, May, mother and father getting the same food. And only the difference that each of the 20 groups, so 4 was 25 in each group, got a different food. And so it was the food that they ate that made the difference in their size. Well, the same thing works with intelligence and longevity, the ability to fend off diseases, size and strength and speed, and all the stuff we attribute to good genes.
Right.
Are really
good nutrition.
Good nutrition. And later on, the term came up, was called epigenetics. Now, this was published. It's a major feature in this book. I use it in my presentation today because I'm considered one of the 2 fathers of the science of epigenetics, which has now replaced genetics. There are no genetically transmitted disease through birth defects. All birth defects, with the exception of, again, exposure to measles virus and poisons and thalidomide and stuff like that. Except for those things, all birth defects are caused by nutritional deficiencies of the embryo. All totally preventable. Many of them, like cystic fibrosis and muscular dystrophy, are totally reversible just with supplementation, even after the baby's born. And, we gave that information to Jerry Lewis, and he got excited around the telethon for 2010. And they said, well, that's interesting stuff that you can reverse muscular dystrophy. Well, we had 100 cases in humans in the Amish community, which we'd done that. And they said, well, we have to prove that's correct. We can't just throw this out. And so we agreed that we'd wait till the next year, till 2011 telethon. And then after the 2010 telethon, the Muscular Dystrophy Association fired Jerry Lewis and shut off the telethons.
It did.
Yep, that's absolutely truth. And so now, of course, we're working with various countries around the world, working with the United Nations to get this information out to the public of the world, because the medical system has been a failure in getting the information to people. Most women do not take prenatal vitamins until they've missed 2 or 3 periods. The embryo is already damaged. And I hold the OBGYNs responsible for this. They should be telling them when they're 12 years old, starting to go through puberty, you better be taking your childbearing years, whether you're planning on a kid now or not, you better be taking your 90 essential nutrients. If you get pregnant, you won't have a baby with a birth defect. So it's all preventable. It's all preventable. And that was one of the things we learned in that study with 20,000 autopsies.
My personal favorite book, Dr. Wallach, is Let's Play Doctor. I mean, I have been sharing this book for the entire 26 years that I've been with Steve. But honestly, we just gave this to all of our top distributors at a previous event just in the last year. When it comes to people trying to be you or trying to repeat your exact information, which we tell everybody they should not be doing in any way, shape, or form, we point them to this book. Really, I call it your Bible. So can you share with our audience a little bit what Let's Play Doctor is all about and why every single person should be carrying this book when they're sharing Youngevity with others?
Okay, one of the things that I wanted to do, because what I was saying was flying in the face of everything that medical doctors were telling people. And so I had to have a system by which people who joined me get the message out and get the proper supplements to people before pregnancy, after pregnancy. If they develop diabetes and obesity in adulthood, they need to do the right things. And so the purpose of this book was to be an alternative to the Merck Manual. The Merck Manual is sort of the pocket Bible for medical doctors. You know, they get out of school, they can't remember everything, so they get a diagnosis, they look it up, they know what treatment to give and what's the cause and everything, then they can sound lucid when they're talking to the patient, because they can't remember, they just got out of school. So Let's Play Doctor was supposed to be the equivalent in alternative terms to the Merck Manual for doctors. And in there, it teaches a lot of diagnostics. You know, you can go to a pharmacy without a prescription. You can get the same test strips doctors use when they give you a $2,000 physical in their office.
Right.
The test strips cost $1.50 each. They come in bottles of 5 or 10 or 50. And you can do blood work. You can do urine work. You can do the equivalent of a colonoscopic exam, all totally for $4.50. You can do your own blood pressure. You can do your own pulse. You can do. You can measure yourself to see if you shrunk any. You can weigh yourself. You don't need to spend $2,000 to have all that stuff done. You can do it yourself. And, obviously you have emergencies and fractures and things like that. You need to go see a doctor. But if you have some condition, in fact, I was just talking today with a young man who's 32 years old. He waking up in the middle of the night with fast heart rate and palpitations of his heart. He goes to a cardiologist. They did all the tests. They can't find anything wrong with your heart. Don't know what to do. Threw up their hands and said, well, we'll just watch it for a while. Well, he's scared because they're in the middle of the night. Every night he's waking up with all these symptoms. They called me and I said, were you ever in a car crash with a rear end collision, have a whiplash? He says, yeah. I said, turn your head to the left and right. Does your neck crunch and crack? He says, oh, it's awful. Sounds like a meat grinder and with sand in it. And I said, okay. You have what's called atrial fibrillation. Did your doctors talk to you about that? No. Okay, you have AFib. Does your heart race in the middle of the night? He says, oh yeah, when I wake up at night with the palpitations, my heart's going 200 beats a minute. And it only happens at night when I'm laying down. Well, that's a postural problem. When you're standing up, it does not do that, and so it's a postural problem. And so what you want to do is got to get rid of all the bad foods. Here's a supplement program that's going to support maintenance repair of the disc between your vertebrae, support maintenance repair of your vertebrae, and it'll all go away. They've done a heart test. Your heart's perfectly normal. Your heart's perfectly normal, and so that's perfect. And he says, well, how come they didn't say that? Well, because they're ignorant. They didn't do 20,000 autopsies. They have no idea, okay? If the EKG machine doesn't show that you have some actual organic thing wrong with the heart, they don't know what questions to ask.
Right.
Okay, that's the problem. That's all in the book, Let's Play Doctor. I get people come to me and say, oh, I went to some hippie or some person and they told me I have parasites or I have this problem, that problem. I said, well, look it up in the book here. let's be a doctor, and it'll teach you how to determine if you do have parasites.
I really do think that every single Youngevity person that is the one book that they should for sure have.
And they should have meetings every week with their family, because this will add 25 to 50 healthy years to their life, save them an enormous amount of unnecessary misery and expense, just following the principles in this book. And again, they can get all my books through drjwallach.com, drjwallach.com. And they can order right online, or if they want to talk to somebody, we have the CDs, the DVDs, the book. And, you know, we're constantly getting new CDs and so forth. They got a couple of new books in the pipeline.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, so you've written tons of books. We could sit here all day and talk about each of them, but why don't we talk about the last two favorite books? We'll leave your number one bestseller for the very end. So let's talk about Epigenetics. That was the book you just most recently published.
Yes, that's about 2 years old now, Epigenetics. The English guy by the name of Bruce Lipton, he looks at identical twins who are separated by divorces, and they are adopted out, and one twin goes to New Jersey, the other twin goes to New Mexico. They eat differently, they're with different families, different environments, and they're different. One's 6'5", the other one is 4'11". Their ability to get good grades is different from the one in New Jersey, from the one in New Mexico, and so forth, yet they were identical twins. And that's because the environment was different, the food was different, the nutrition was different, just like those ducks in those 4 groups, okay, which is in the book, again, Rare Earths Men Cures. And so this book, Epigenetics, outlines and shows point for point why the term epigenetics is a more correct term. The subtitle is The Death of the Genetic Theory of Disease Transmission. The death, it's a very profound statement. The death of the genetic theory of disease transmission. And that's me in that picture of 1977 of one of my baby monkeys with cystic fibrosis. I'm 38 years old there.
I love it.
Yeah. And this book goes into all the diseases thought to be genetic, either birth defects or diseases like diabetes and obesity and heart disease and cancer and so forth, and shows why they're caused by what we eat, what we don't eat, what we don't get in our food. And the bottom line was technology changed everything. Back when we were primitive, and today the top 20 longevity cultures, with the exception of one, the 19 out of the 20 are all third world cultures that don't even have electricity. They live longer than we do. They have 100 per 250 of their population. We only have 1 per 10,000. And the reason is they use wood for fuel. They're universal fuel in third world cultures. And they throw the wood ashes in their gardens, and wood ashes are not ashes. They're 98% minerals that the tree sucked up out of the ground. You burn the wood, the powder that's left is not ashes, although we call it wood ashes. We've been doing that for thousands of years. And they put it in the garden. The plants accelerate in growth because of the fertilizer or the minerals, but also they include the minerals into their tissues. And when people eat the corn and the peas and the beans and the tomatoes and the carrots and the beets and the potatoes and the onions and the squash, guess what? And the fruit that are fertilized with these wood ashes, aka plant minerals, or plant minerals, aka wood ashes, they're getting these minerals unbeknownst to them. But as soon as they switch over to electricity, within 20 years after the plants suck all the minerals out of the soil, plants only need 3 elements from the soil, vertebrates need 60. So if you're eating food that's fertilized with commercial fertilizer, you're 57 short. Because farmers only put in what's necessary to give them maximum yields because they get paid for tons and bushels. They do not get paid for the nutritional value of the food. So that's all in this book, Epigenetics, in great detail, painfully excruciating detail. And it will make you weep and cry because you've had people who are your friends, your church mates, your neighbors, your workmates, your family, who've been ill and sick and died unnecessarily because doctors don't know these things. This is written in a way that even Michelle can understand it.
Of course, thank you. I definitely need that. So one of the questions that was just asked, Dad, is if people are heating their homes with wood, should they take the ash out and put it into their gardens?
Absolutely, but we don't know if there's only 3 minerals in those wood ashes, or 12, or 15, or 22, or 30, or 45. You don't know that there's 60 in there unless you're going to spend, $2,500 for an analysis. So
but it certainly can't hurt.
It's not going to hurt. Here, just don't, in the same fireplace, don't burn plastic and stuff like that. You
Garbage.
don't have garbage, yeah.
Yeah.
But to make a long story short, Michelle, you still have to supplement, just like we put oil in the car before the engine burns up as preventive maintenance. We don't wait till the engine burns up to put oil in the car. We don't put dirt from Texas in the car to save money on oil.
Well, and I wouldn't trust my health just on the ashes of the wood I burned in my home.
No, you can't. You got to supplement to make sure you're getting all 90. Mm-hmm. That's why we have the Healthy Start Pack. That's the basic 90 essential. It actually has 248 nutrients in it, but it has the 90 essential nutrients, including the 6 rare earths, which no other company has: ytterbium, yttrium, neodymium, praseodymium, samarium, europium. Any one of those triples the lifespan of laboratory animals. And we give you all 6. We don't charge anything extra for those. They're in there. That's from our natural source. We're so proud of that.
Well, we have thousands of people joining Youngevity still to this day, nearly 21 years later, every month. I mean, obviously, you know how big we are going international. New people are being introduced to you all the time.
We're averaging 10,000 new people every month.
We do. We do average about 10,000 new people every single month. So let's go to your number one seller, because that's what you're getting into, is the 90 essential nutrients. And obviously, I mean, you can tell it way better than I can, but tell our audience, especially the new people who are joining today, why this is by far the number one thing that they should read.
Well, it covers all the things that are in all these other books, but not in as much detail as you will in the books that are written specifically on those subjects. So it gives you a big overview. It gives you kind of a autobiography of my history and how we kind of wound up where we're at. And people always say, well, why'd you pick that title, Dead Doctors Don't Lie? Well, I was finding out that the average lifespan of doctors was in their 50s. Average lifespan of doctors is in their 50s. I said, why do people go to doctors for information on health and longevity when their average lifespan, according to their own studies, which came out in 1999, was 56? I said 58. And
right.
Yeah, I said 58. They said 56. I said, why'd you say 56? People are laughing at you. They said, we just wanted to show your data was not correct. That's how silly they are. Okay? But at any rate, Dead Doctors Don't Lie is not meant to be an offensive statement. It's meant to be a factual statement. It's one of those things where doctors make up things when they don't know the answer. They don't like to be put in a position where they say, you know, I don't know, I'm going to have to check with somebody, I'll get back to you. They would say, oh, you have an autoimmune disease, your body's attacking itself, and I'm going to give you some treatment here for your symptoms, and come in a month. Or they'll say, you know, you got somebody else in your family with the same problem, and sometimes you don't have anybody to say, well, does your dog have these problems? Yeah, okay, this is a genetic thing. Okay, this is a genetic thing, and so that's why you have these problems. And I can only treat the symptoms because I can't fix a genetic disease. Well, they're not genetic diseases. And so it goes into, again, the concept that we have to take care of ourselves. If we don't, the newest information from the government is that our children, right now, our children in America, we will be the first generation of Americans that do not live as long as their parents. I'm not prepared to accept that. And so people say, why are you on the road for 320 days out of the year? Well, because I'm not prepared to accept that prediction by the government. I'm not going to be happy to let our children die before us.
We have grandchildren and great-grandchildren now.
And so we're working day and night around the world. Again, lectured twice at United Nations affiliate groups at the United Nations, and working on that some more. Really the same concepts. And they see the writing on the wall, because all these countries that used to be in the top longevity cultures, as soon as they went to being a first world culture, they got electricity and propane and all this kind of stuff. Within 20 years, the countries went bankrupt paying for all their medical care. Okay? Because suddenly now all these diseases they never heard of before are coming on, because these are all nutritional deficiency diseases. So, Dead Doctors Don't Lie will give you my background, so you have it in print, you can show it to people. I'm not just some idiot that
of course not.
You know,
no one thinks that, trust me.
Well, I don't know. Some of these, which I say, anti-alternative medical groups have said some pretty nasty things about me. Of course, they're all dead now, so that's kind of interesting. But at any rate, yeah, this is still, we have a CD, a DVD. There's been many DVDs come off of that book. My most recent one, there's two recent ones. One is A Stick of Butter a Day Keeps the Doctor Away. It's not an apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's a stick of butter a day. A stick of butter a day, and eating full-fat milk and not 2% milk. You don't want non-dairy coffee creamers. You want full cream in your coffee. If you go low-fat, particularly low dairy fat, guess what? Your odds of getting Parkinson's disease goes way up. Big study, 135,000 people. The people who ate more fat lived 23% longer. Okay, a stick of butter a day keeps the doctor away. Then the second one is Live Long and Finish Strong. One of our great distributors went through all my 68 CDs and picked all the statements I made in those 68 CDs, all the facts I put out on longevity from all the different sources into one CD.
Right.
It is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. Yeah, it's called Live Long and Finish Strong. And so you can ask for that now. That's available, as well as A Stick of Butter.
At jdwallach.com?
DRJ.
Oh, sorry, drjwallach.com.
Yeah, drjwallach.com. You get all the CDs, all the DVDs, all the books. And you want to have them available for your people in your group, because you want to have tools that duplicate all the words that are being said. If you have a group that they don't have tools, and they're all having to make up answers like doctors do, you're going to have chaos and failure. That's why so many people fail in network marketing as a profession, because they don't have tools. We're giving you tools that you can point to the paragraph in the book, and it goes to the references in the back, in the index, and so there's be absolutely no reason for anybody to give out misinformation or say...
Well, I think one of the things that's important too that I'll reiterate is that I actually heard you take that call from that gentleman before we started the Facebook Live today, and you actually know what questions to ask. And I hear a lot of people sometimes trying to diagnose and tell them exactly what nutrients they need or exactly what Youngevity products they need, but they never ask the questions that you know to ask because of your medically trained background, because of the massive amount of schooling that you've gone through. So we tell people all the time, you shouldn't take one thing Dr. Wallach says out of context and think that you're the master of the information. These tools are what you've made really to help them.
Exactly. These are there, just like every profession, whether you're an architect. I mean, what tool does a pastor or a priest use? The Bible.
Bible.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, everybody's giving out the same message.
Of course.
And so that's why I picked this principle to deal with things that are just absolutely insanely wrong. Do I have time for one more story?
You have time for one more story.
Okay. This one is a great one. This is about the book Black Gene Lies.
Oh, this is a great book. Okay, I'm glad you're going to share this one.
Okay. Yeah, Black Gene Lies is actually this research in the book was publishing was paid for by Pastor Creflo Dollar from Atlanta, Georgia.
That's right.
And I had met him over the phone with Andy Young, who had been the mayor of Atlanta, the ambassador to the United Nations under Jimmy Carter, and he worked with Dr. King as one of his generals in the civil rights movement. Very, very accomplished man, very well known. And I helped him rebuild his knees without surgery and everything, so he and I have a long-running relationship, very nice relationship. And so he calls me about 1991 and says, look, I have Pastor Creflo Dollar on the phone here, has a question about his 11-and-a-half-year-old daughter who has a genetic form of asthma, and she's a little black child with a form of asthma that's genetic in black kids. And I said, where did you hear that? He said, well, from Emory University. I said, oh, those are the guys that fired me. Okay, they're
That's true. I forgot that. That's right.
The same people that fired me for not knowing things were genetic, right?
Right.
And so, at any rate, basically, they said that his daughter, 11-and-a-half-year-old, was told by Emory University and Grady Memorial Hospital that she was going to be dead before she was 12 because she's not responding to maintenance medication or emergency medication. And they said, can you help her? Can you at least make her life comfortable? Can you help her live 2 years? Because they're saying she'll be dead before she's 12, which is a couple of months away from now. And I said, yeah, I can reverse that. And there's this long silence. It seemed like hours, but it was only 2 minutes. And they had their hand over the phone. I could hear them talking.
Right.
Came back and said, well, Dr. Wallach, without, what should we say? We don't want to say anything bad about you, but Emory University said it's genetic, and that's why she's not responding to this medication. I said, no. The reason she's not responding to the medication, she's not absorbing it. She has gluten intolerance. What's that? They didn't tell you about that. They didn't ask you about that, did they? I said, no. Well, that's why only dead doctors don't lie. Okay? They don't know. And so, her only chance, if you just do what they say, just do nothing and wait, she will be dead before she's 12 years old, which is 2 months from now. So, what I want you to do is get everybody in the household, Pastor Dollar, Pastor Taffy, who's the mother, grandmom, chef, all the other kids in the house, the dog, the cat, the bird, the fish, has got to be totally gluten-free. You got to go through there with a fine-tooth comb because your child's life depends on it. No gluten in the house, no wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Then I wanted to have the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids, and for her body weight, we figured it out. We shipped it to him. I said, call me in 2 weeks and 4 weeks and 6 weeks and give me a report. Pastor Dollar called me in 2 weeks and said, my baby's cured.
Wow.
She doesn't have her asthma anymore, and she's not taking any medication, nothing. You were right. In a couple of months, I get this check in the mail. I said, well, I had to call him up and say, I appreciate that, but I don't take any money for my services and diagnoses and speaking and anything like that for the sale of the products. And so I'm going to send it back. And I didn't want you to think I was rude, so I just want to call you personally and tell you why I'm sending the check back.
Of course.
Said, wait a minute. Can you do research? I said, yes, sir. I said, what would you like me to do? He said, I want you to find all the diseases said to be genetic in the black community that are not, like high blood pressure, sickle cell anemia. They said, I know your work about sickle cell anemia from
Do they think diabetes is genetic?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, sickle cell anemia, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, all this stuff, right? And So I said, no, none of that's genetic. He said, well, prove it. So it took me 6 months, get all the research done, and look at all the research that had been published and so forth. Sent in the manuscript saying, okay, I'm ready to publish this. Do you want to throw anything out of there or add something I missed? A couple of weeks later, he called me back and said, I've had several people read it. Let's publish it like it is. And we did. And so he's responsible for this. Every black child in the world needs to read this book. Every white child in the world needs to read this book because the same principles are true for white kids as black kids.
Of course.
Because there are no genetic diseases. There's no genetic birth defects. There's no genetic disease you acquire after birth. Okay? And so certainly every black kid in America needs to read this book. It'll add 25 to 50 healthy years to your life, save them an enormous amount of unnecessary misery and money. And I know they've been given away by the hundreds to the African nations and the United Nations, and that's just a beautiful thing.
Well, you continued a long relationship with Creflo Dollar.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I've spoken there. We have 2 CDs. One is called Black Gene Lies 1, which was a radio interview. They asked me about 10 diseases that are thought to be genetic in the black community, and we talked about that. And then Black Gene Lies 2, which was the basis for the book. And then, of course, we have a DVD set where I spoke to his church twice. Each DVD represents a sermon, if you will, in the church to 3,000 parishioners, families of big, huge churches. And it was beautiful. I mean, he was going to do the faith healing on Wednesday night, and I was going to do the natural healing on Thursday night. He calls me up on Wednesday. He said, where are you? I said, well, I'm in Atlanta here, and I didn't want to miss your thing, so I knew how to blend it in with mine. He said, well, you're going to have to do mine too.
Oh, wow.
He set me up.
He set you up. I love it.
So I did both, and both of those DVDs, which they recorded professionally, it's like Hollywood quality, are available, and he published them in a premier packaging, like a presentation quality packaging. Okay, it's just beautiful, the whole set. Okay, and so you can get all of that at drjwallach.com.
Well, Dr. Wallach, I just want to thank you so much. I know this was your one day off, so I appreciate you coming in this morning. I know it wasn't at the top of your list. We didn't tell anybody that we were going to have you on, and you have gotten hundreds on this morning. You have people coming in from all around the world, all these different countries. You've got our top distributors on. Tom Chenault is on. Ben Fuchs is on. Helen Watt is on. So many people have come in to join and watch this morning. So I'm super thankful for everybody who's joined us this morning. But honestly, from everybody out there who's left you a message this morning on this Facebook Live, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and for just sharing a little bit of a piece of you with our audience today and with everybody that just adores and worships you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you so much, Youngevity Nation. People always say, well, aren't you lonely traveling so much? I said, no, I've got family wherever I go.
That's totally true. You do. Well, we
God
wish
bless you.
everybody a Merry Christmas. We hope everyone has a happy holidays. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.